Hello there, and welcome to this exclusive interview with Assistant Minister Julian Hill from Australia. He is the Assistant Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Citizenship, Customs, and International Education. Hello there, and welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here and great to be back in Sri Lanka.
How are you enjoying Sri Lanka right now?
Well, I love Sri Lanka. It's not my first trip.
Okay.
I've been here for holidays previously in many different parts of the country, although the formal meetings have been very productive, but it's a very difficult time for Sri Lanka and the Sri Lankan people, given the cyclone and the floods and the ongoing response and transition into the recovery and rebuilding phase. Australia's been very proud to be one of the first countries to recognise the crisis, to make an immediate donation, and then in the first few days realises things were a lot worse or getting a lot worse, to make additional funds available for that critical humanitarian response.
So, Minister Hill, since you've been here, you've had several high-level discussions with top government officials in Sri Lanka. How have those discussions been? Let's start off with, who did you meet with since your arrival here?
Well, we met with the Honourable Prime Minister this morning and also Minister for Education. We had discussions in both capacities. In respect of her role as Prime Minister, we spoke about Australia's support for the response. The scale of the devastation has impacted Australia and Australians. We have more than 200,000 Australians who have Sri Lankan heritage, many born in Sri Lanka, but of course also many born in Australia who are also proud of their dual identity, their Sri Lankan heritage, whether that's Sinhalese or Tamil, or Burghers, and also the Muslim community.
Okay.
So we spoke about that, but Australians have been worried about family and friends, worried about their ancestral villages, the landslides. 2/3 of the railways out of action, more than 700 people, of course, lost their life. So the first part of the discussion with the Prime Minister was reaffirming that Australia will be there, not just now, but in the weeks and months ahead as the government and civil society guide us on what else is needed in terms of supporting Sri Lanka and standing with the people in solidarity. And then, of course, we moved on to the education discussion.
So, speaking of Australia's support in these trying times for many Sri Lankans across the island, really, the cyclone Ditwa took us by surprise, and it took away many valuable lives and caused lasting devastation for the entire country. Now, Sri Lanka is no stranger to massive destructive natural events, and one thing that we've seen in the past is when a devastation of this scale takes place, there are massive donations flowing in from overseas, and sometimes there are issues in whether or not these funds make it to the people who need it most. This time around, we've taken a different step. Funds are going out quite faster than usual. So, what is the program like for the funds that are flowing in from Australia to reach the people on the ground?
You're right, Sri Lanka is no stranger in modern times to disasters. There was the 2024 floods, not nearly as devastating in scale, the economic crisis, and of course the devastating 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. Australia's been there at every point and responding in different ways depending on what the people in the government need. I would also add, and then I'll go back to the other part of your question, that this is a two-way thing, and we were very grateful for the solidarity and the support that Sri Lankans showed to Australia in the devastating bushfires just some years ago, including donation of tea to our firefighters and responders, and we love Sri Lankan tea. So gestures of solidarity go two ways. In terms of the response, we have the ability, we had pre-positioned material, including dignity kits for women with maternity and women's needs. I saw them yesterday, but we had the ability to respond through well-established international and multilateral groups. So that's one way. So we're very confident the money, and this is an Australian law, right? When we choose to make a humanitarian donation, there was no hesitation. Sri Lanka, of course, as a warm and trusted partner, it was instant. But when we make a donation under Australian law, we need to be very confident that the money goes precisely where it's needed. And we acknowledge and applaud the government's anti-corruption drive, which has been the subject of a lot of discussion and effort. The other part, though, of the relief efforts has started, but I think will continue to build which is from civil society. So many Australian temples, mosques, churches,
Hmm.
and community organisations, of which I have many in my electorate. More than 10,000 of the voters in my electorate
Hmm.
claim Sri Lankan heritage, which is a pretty cool thing. But those community links will build in the
Hmm.
coming months, I'm very confident, and provide more targeted support at a community level, which is an important part of that support.
So, just like Sri Lanka is no stranger to natural disasters, Australia are also, like you quite rightly
Mm.
highlighted, I think it goes without saying for any part of the world. So, you would have seen response of the Australian government, the responses that foreign governments have had to various natural disasters. How has the response like been in Sri Lanka?
The determination of the government is absolutely clear and firm. Um, Look, I've worked, before I was in the parliament, I was in the civil service in one of our large states and worked through the bushfire response. Um, People rightly have strong expectations of governments in times of natural disaster and emergency. Not a single government in the world could or would get everything perfect
Mm.
because of the nature of crises, particularly in hard to reach areas. Of course,
Mm.
it takes some extra days. We saw with some of the bushfires in Australia just a few years ago that there were communities stranded,
Mm.
very angry, upset, but it simply took a few days until we could get Navy ships and boats to evacuate people. But I have no doubt in the determination of the Sri Lankan government to confront the crisis and to do so quickly. But also the discussions that and the lessons that we've learnt from our disasters
Mm.
are about rebuilding. And there's a saying in Australia, I'm not suggesting that this is a Sri Lankan saying, but you don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Mm.
There are always in devastation opportunities to think, well, what lessons can be learnt? In Australia, we learnt lessons and changed building standards after the fires. We changed planning standards. We made some tough decisions that
Mm.
no longer could certain people choose to live at the top of a very isolated hill where a fire can come in 5 minutes. So we went through that process ourselves. What's right for Sri Lanka will be for the Sri Lankan people and the government to determine, but we will be there in solidarity and relook at with the government and civil society, as I said, and business, the nature of the support that we give and think are there priorities that we could or should change to
Mm.
respond to the changed circumstances.
Mm. And in the midst of all of these crises, especially the aftermath of Cyclone Ditwa, it really hit in Sri Lanka when some of our students were sitting for their national examinations. Their education was
Yeah.
affected by it, which really brings me to the next topic. Speaking of Sri Lanka and Australia and our relations, there is a massive Sri Lankan community in Australia. Uh, Pursuing their higher education. There are many affiliate universities in Sri Lanka that offer Australian qualifications. You said you met with the Prime Minister in her capacity as Prime Minister and also Minister of Education. You initially spoke about the discussions that ensued in her capacity as Prime Minister. What did you discuss on the education front?
Um, One of the things which I observed, and I'm not betraying private conversations, this is an issue, a comment I've made publicly over the years, is that in Australia, like most democracies, voters love immediate things.
Mm.
They like cash support. They like infrastructure built. They like a shiny new hospital, and that's important. Um, but often, some of the wisest investments that a government can make is in the long term development, which might not be seen in the very short term. In Australia, two examples: preventative health.
Mm.
Whilst communities often look at hospitals, they want more doctors right now,
Mm.
it is important also to invest in preventative health measures because the payoff can be better for society in the long run. And of course, early childhood education is something we're looking at in Australia. And so we acknowledge the Prime Minister's really passionate personal commitment in amongst all of the other pressures on the budget and the government, of which there are many in your country and ours, to secure investment in education because it's that 20-year journey.
Mm.
One of the smartest things that we can do in Australia and any country is to invest in our young people because that's how we become wealthier and more successful in 10, 20 years. So it's not an easy thing, and we acknowledge that. You're right that Australia is really proud to host more than 20,000 young Sri Lankans who choose, they do have choices, to study some of their formative years in Australia. Some fall in love with Australians, choose to stay, be that human bridge between our countries. But many or most come back to Sri Lanka, bringing that knowledge and experience with them. We see this as a two-way partnership. We would like to welcome and see more young Australians choose to come in, do some semesters or subjects in Sri Lanka, and also many great Australian institutions that partner with or indeed set up here in Sri Lanka to bring that global Australian quality education to Sri Lanka. So it's very much a two-way partnership was one of the themes of our discussions.
You spoke quite rightly about early childhood education. I think even before this government came into power in their electoral manifest, they had highlighted the importance of early childhood education. What has Australia's journey been like in developing a policy on early childhood education, and how has it worked so far?
It is a journey and it's ongoing.
Okay.
In the long run, my party would like to see universal childcare or universal early childhood education for everyone.
Okay.
We are moving in that direction. We pass laws guaranteeing every child from, I think, about three, a certain number of hours each week of early childhood education.
Okay.
There's actually, I'll just pick up on the language. Some people say childcare, and that's how it's traditionally been thought of. The language increasingly is changing to early childhood education because the research is very clear that babies and young children's brains develop so fast that providing structured support then better prepares them for school and TAFE and vocational education and university and a successful life. So we're continuing to invest in that and reforming our systems. We've also actually, I think it's 2 days ago, in the last few days, we've introduced the world's first ban on social media accounts for children under 16. That's been a personal commitment of the Prime Minister. And controversial because the tech giants, Facebook, X, Snapchat,
Not very happy.
TikTok, well, you wouldn't say they love it, but it's about protecting kids to be able to grow up, to play sport, to be present, to build emotional connections with their peers, and protecting them from online harms until they're old enough to know how to navigate those risks. So that's up to every country to decide.
I've always had this question since the moment I saw this, and I saw there was a discussion ongoing for quite a long time on this ban. How is the enforcement like? How does that work?
Oh, it'll be imperfect. We've said that for some months, knowing that we're moving towards that. It can be styled as a ban. It also can be styled as a delay.
Okay.
It's just delaying the access of a given human being
Okay.
until they're old enough to be able to manage the risks. And we know from research over now a lot of years that the majority of young people have been exposed to harm, the risk of suicide, mental health, bullying that can come through those platforms. But the enforcement, we know, will be imperfect. The responsibility lies in the social media companies. We're not criminalising the activity for parents or kids. And, of course, there'll be a proportion of people who try and get around that with technology. But it will improve over the coming months as the technology improves.
So, as far as making this decision, and you said it was quite controversial, and you said your prime minister feels quite deeply about this issue. So there's no chance that Australia might backtrack
No,
in the future on this. No.
no. Parents overwhelmingly welcome it.
Okay.
Some time ago, each state and territory has moved to restrict and stop the use of mobile phones at schools during school hours. We saw that had a wonderful impact on the ability of children to concentrate and learn without being constantly on their phones distracted, as well as help reduce some of the bullying, the vectors for bullying. So no, we're not backing down. It's a very popular move with parents. Most parents, not everyone agrees with everything, I get that. But it's something we think that is important now to stand up to the global tech giants and say your product, they're trying to sell advertising, let's be clear. They might dress it up as connecting and all of the other things, and there are some good things. Grandparents and kids can stay in touch with each other, but they're trying to sell you advertising.
Okay.
And that can be a vector for very negative behaviour. So we're saying there's a time and a place for that, but not when there's young children that need to develop their own maturity before they get exposed to those risks.
Well, interestingly, you spoke about a school in Australia that didn't allow children to use phones during school hours. In Sri Lanka, you can't even take a phone to school.
Yes,
Back in school, I remember if by chance someone had sneaked in a phone, that phone would be confiscated. So,
yes. Well, you're very wise. Took us a little while to get there, but we're there now.
well, Assistant Minister Hill, speaking of, we've spoken quite a wide range of topics, and another portfolio under your belt is, of course, citizenship. And then we know as much as there are students from Sri Lanka traveling to Australia to pursue their education. You yourself said there are a group who decide to settle down in Australia. And my question to you comes against a backdrop where globally we see a massive anti-immigration drive, particularly, I believe, the overwhelming sound coming from the United States, from the upper echelons of government in the United States. Then we see certain countries in the European Union, including the United Kingdom, coming up with policies, legislations to limit immigration into those countries. And recently, we saw even in Australia, several thousand people gathering, protesting against immigration, against immigrants, and would like to know what stance the Australian government has on this developing
Mm.
or rising anti-immigration rhetoric.
Um, I'll make 3 points, and it's a very complicated question. We could talk all
All day
day
about it.
about this, but I'll try and make 3 points. I'm also Assistant Minister for Customs,
Okay.
and we met with the head of your customs agency, we met with the Controller General of Immigration, we met with the Border Centre. And the first point I'd make is that the Australian government, like any responsible government,
Hmm.
will always develop and operate our migration program from year to year, and it
Hmm.
changes every year, in our national interest.
Hmm.
Sri Lanka does the same, rightly so.
Hmm.
And what that migration program looks like will change according to economic circumstances, social and family needs, and so on. So we have, different elements to the program. There's skilled and business migration because we have an aging population. There's
Hmm.
partner visas and child because people fall in love with people from overseas because
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
very much part of modern Australia. I've got people from 150 different countries
Hmm.
who speak more than 300 languages,
Hmm.
practice more than 100 faith traditions in my area
Alone.
alone, one of the most multicultural in Australia. So, and of course, there's also a humanitarian program.
Okay.
So there's different parts. So I'll make that first point. Um, the second point, of course, is that borders
Hmm.
are a national asset, and it's been the same for centuries. The technology might change, the threats might change, but every country wants to keep the things that they don't want in, whether that's people or goods, as far away as possible,
Hmm.
and let the things they do want in or people they want in as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Okay.
So, that's part of our management of migration.
Hmm.
But the third point, directly on the trends that you observe, you're right, there's concern about migration in many parts of the world.
Hmm.
We live in a time of human history where there's more than 100 million people displaced by war, conflict, or climate change,
Hmm.
as well as people who, I don't blame them for doing so, may not be classed as refugees but are seeking a better life or a
Greener
different life,
pastures.
a safer life. So there's that movement of people, which with climate change accelerating a shared challenge for us, is not going to just go away overnight.
Okay.
And so within all of those pressures, you have also seen, unfortunately, the very small percentage of people, right? In every human society, you go to any country on the planet, and there's a minority of people who are horribly racist. They're scared of people who are different. They only want to live or commune with people who speak their language or have the same faith.
So
There's
look like that.
look like them, exactly. And that's true in every country. I won't name names, but I think people know that. It's not most people. Most people like each other or get to know each other like each other when they do. But what you've seen in Australia, we don't have mass migration. Mass migration is a term that means the uncontrolled movement of millions of people. And you're right, there are issues in Europe.
Hmm.
There are issues on the southern US border, but that's not the context that Sri Lanka faces,
Hmm.
and it's not the context Australia faces. But that's because of our good work together over a long time to manage those risks. The final point I'd make, though, is that minority of people has not grown massively, but it's become louder through social media and this really nasty rhetoric. It's not the view of most Australians. Most Australians love and cherish our multicultural character. We see this in the research, we see it in schools, in workplaces, in community, in sport, where people just get on. And I can go door knocking. I do go door knocking. We don't generally need security in Australia. We're very lucky for that, for MPs to move around. But I can go door knocking and visit 40 houses in an afternoon and find people from 30 different backgrounds. So most Australians don't hold those views. Those loud views may sound unwelcoming, but we will, of course, dial up or down or change our migration program to suit our national interest. Sorry for the long answer, but it's complicated.
I think it's quite a comprehensive answer.
I'll have some lovely Sri Lankan tea.
Of course, please do help yourself. So, building on that on that answer, you said that you know, despite this rhetoric, you go door knocking without much security and no fear for your life on your part, uh, as far as your constituents are concerned.
No, Australians are very direct, and we can all sit around as we do at times in formal meetings with nameplates and flowers, and we do that. But then there's a real warmth between Australians and Sri Lankans, and I don't have those fears. But like many parts of the world, there are security challenges in our current time. But we're a safe country, we're a welcoming country, and overwhelmingly, I'm confident that Australia will remain so.
Finally, let's move on to another portfolio under your belt, customs. You said you met with the head of the customs. How did those discussions go? Because Sri Lanka, in Sri Lanka, we are trying to reform or make more efficient Sri Lankan customs department to, of course, bring in more revenue to the country and really standardize the procedures that we follow there. What were the discussions like?
Really warm, and we're very lucky that our High Commissioner took some time out earlier in his career from the Foreign Service and did some time as the Director of Customs Policy for Australia and also the Australia Border Force. So he adds a lot of depth to those discussions. The relationships, we have shared challenges. Remember I said before about getting stuff through the border quickly and keeping the bad stuff away? We deal with exactly the same issues. We've been working on technical cooperation and capacity building, shared training, inviting Sri Lankan customs officials to Australia so we can learn from each other. So that was greatly appreciated and talked about. We've been talking about the plans for the new electronic smart kiosks, the border risk assessment, which Australia funded a few years ago, with 10 agencies now working together. Sri Lanka cleverly adapted bits of the Australian model, but did it in a way that's right for Sri Lanka. So it was a very warm discussion. Obviously, the point you make about revenue is very important for the country coming out of the economic crisis, and the government's progress with that was impressive from the outside. Political debates matter for Sri Lankans. I'll stay out of that. But on paper, the progress was impressive on the fiscal side, which luckily has also enabled a faster response than perhaps would have been the case a few years ago. But the revenue discussions, we have the same issues on our side with transnational and serious and organised crime. Sri Lanka, a very important part of the port economy is transshipment. So they were explaining to us that about 20% of the containers that people see at the port come into Sri Lanka. The rest are coming on as a stop. That might be the ship refuelling, the crew having a break, and a lot of goods being swapped around. That provides opportunities for organised crime, and your officials are incredibly professional. And the final thing, it is a shared challenge in every agency. When you've got organised crime, they will always be looking for a way to avoid the law, to corrupt officials, and the efforts on integrity and anti-corruption, exactly like we have. Our government introduced just a few years ago a National Anti-Corruption Commission. We have an internal integrity unit, and the Director General was explaining to us that the seriousness with which that's being talked about is helping his agency to improve revenue collection and ensure standards. And these are shared challenges that every country faces.
Like you quite rightly said, Sri Lanka had a massive issue on corruption.
Well, I didn't say that.
we continue.
Your words.
You said that the Director General said that the highlight or the anti-corruption drive has enabled his officers to work more efficiently. So speaking on,
it helps set the culture, and I think our government would say I'll talk on behalf of Australia.
Okay.
Political debate is a matter, as I said, for Sri Lankans, but
Mm.
we would say that the focus on corruption, on strengthening integrity institutions, and we've seen, political comment. I can make it about Australia, but it was embarrassing that under the former government for 9 years, Australia fell down the rankings of Transparency International,
Okay.
but became ranked as more
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 corrupt.
corrupt.
Understood.
There's probably a better way of phrasing that, but you know what I mean. But the introduction of the National Anti-Corruption Commission and a range of things helps set the tone. If a government sets the tone, then it enables good leaders in the public sector to help to lift their agencies.
Do you think Sri Lanka's current government is setting a right tone?
Oh, well, answering that really is a matter for Sri Lankans. We've both been proud democracies
Mm.
for a long time, obviously, since independence. So that's a question that gets answered through the newspapers, through media interviews with locals, and ultimately through elections in our democracy. But Australia works with the government at the table. We're very pleased to work with the government on the response, but also on those many issues, whether it's education, customs, technical capacity building, and so on.
Thank you very much, Assistant Minister
Thank you.
Julian Hill, for
Thank you
joining
so
us
much.
on this exclusive interview. And of course, during these trying times for all Sri Lankans, thank you very much for all the support that you've provided to Sri Lanka. Also, we too have a program, Sahana Yatra, that has been dispatching relief aid to people who need it most. So we have seen firsthand the kind of support that Sri Lanka needs, and we only hope and pray that Sri Lankans in need get more of this support. Once again, thank you very much.
Can I put one more message out
Definitely.
while your camera's rolling?
Yes.
One of the things we spoke to the Honourable Prime Minister about, and I put on my social media and will take on board, is a message to people from around the world
Okay.
to not cancel their holidays.
Okay.
Having been someone who, last time I was here, I spent a few weeks, had New Year's Eve dinner on the beach in Gaul. I went up to the elephants, went to Ella on the tea plantation, took a suitcase full of tea home, caught the train back to Colombo. It's a beautiful country. People might want to look at their itinerary if there's places that aren't quite, in the central area. But overwhelmingly, we want people to send the message to their family and friends, still come for your summer holidays.
Sri Lanka is safe.
The beaches are open, the hotels are open again. Come on down.
Definitely. And I strongly believe that people watching should take Assistant Minister Julian Hill's advice. Thank you very much
Thank
again,
you so
sir.
much.
Thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.